retired chemical engineer, Lake Fork, Texas. Tournament morning. $50,000 base boats lined up at the ramp, fish finders beeping, guys in matching jerseys spraying their lures with $30 bottles of Pro Scent formula. He's in a 14-foot aluminum John boat. Nothing fancy, no electronics. His tackle box looks like something from 1987. 4 hours later, he had 11 keeper bass in the live well. The 3 tournament boats closest to him had a combined total of 2. Stay till the end, I'll show you exactly what he did. And it costs you nothing. Before he even picked up a rod, he did something that looked strange. He reached into a small container of dark mud he'd scooped from the bank, rubbed it on both hands, rinsed them in the lake, and smelled his fingers. Just nodded to himself. Then grabbed his first lure. That mud. That right there. But you need the full picture to understand why it works. Because the reason goes deeper than anything the fishing industry will ever put on a label. Comment below where you're watching from. I've got folks tuning in from Texas, Louisiana, the Carolinas, up through the Great Lakes. And I want to know where you're fishing. His name's Earl. 71 years old. Been fishing since he was 8. But it wasn't until his mid-40s that something clicked. He spent 30 years running quality control at a chemical plant outside Beaumont, Texas. His whole career was understanding how compounds bond to surfaces, how trace amounts of certain molecules contaminate environments that look perfectly clean to the naked eye. One afternoon on the Sabine River, he brought that knowledge to the water, and it changed everything. Here's what most fishermen never think about. Between your truck and your first cast, your hands touch a gas pump handle, a chrome door handle, sunscreen your wife made you put on, and nickel coins rattling in your pocket. Then those same fingers touch every single hook, every swivel, every bait. Before the lure hits the water, it's already broadcasting a chemical signal you can't see, can't smell, and can't fix with a spray bottle. Earl ran 3 controlled experiments on the same stretch of the Sabine over the summer of 2009. Same spot, same species, same time of day. 1 session with fully contaminated hands. Normal day, normal fisherman. 1 session using a commercial scent eliminator spray. 1 session with his mud treatment. Contaminated session, 3 fish in 4 hours. Spray session, 4 fish. Mud session, 14 fish. That's not a typo. But here's what Earl didn't fully understand at first. Why the mud crushed the spray. The answer has a name that most people only hear at a doctor's office. It's called chelation. And once you understand it, you'll never look at your tackle the same way again. Chelation. The word comes from the Greek for claw. It describes what happens when a metal ion latches onto an organic molecule and won't release. Your hands carry chelated compounds constantly. Nickel from coins and plated metal surfaces, chromium from door handles and tackle hardware, zinc from galvanized sinkers. These metal organic compounds bond to the proteins in your skin. Touch a hook, they transfer. No spray changes that. Now here's where bass, catfish, redfish, and crappie come in. Fish detect the world through 2 systems most fishermen never seriously consider. Their olfactory system, smell, and their lateral line, which reads electrical fields and chemical gradients in the water with a sensitivity that makes a bloodhound look average. Research from the School of Aquatic and Fishery Sciences at the University of Washington found that certain fish species can detect nickel organic chelates at concentrations below 1 part per billion. 1 part per billion. For a largemouth bass, that chemical trace on your lure is like walking into a restaurant and smelling industrial bleach coming from the kitchen. Before you see the menu, before you sit down, your brain says something's wrong here. The fish doesn't think about it. It just turns away. And you're sitting there wondering why they're not biting when the water looks perfect. Old guides on the Chesapeake Bay and the Gulf Coast have known pieces of this for generations. Always wet your hands before touching live bait. Keep the tackle box away from the gas can. Never handle your lures after putting on sunscreen. They passed those rules down without knowing the chemistry behind them. They just knew the rules worked. The scent spray companies know about chelation. They understand exactly what's happening. They just need you not to understand it. Because if you did, you'd realize that bank clay solves the problem for free. A chelated nickel compound can't be masked by a fruity attractant. It has to be physically stripped. Clay particles in natural mud do that. Spending $30 a bottle on a spray that leaves the actual problem untouched is the whole game they're running. The link pinned below has the complete guide to eliminating your chemical signature before you ever make your first cast. Go check it out. Now you know what the problem is. Here's how most people get the fix completely wrong, and what the actual system looks like. The most common mistake: buy the spray, apply it on top of hands that are already contaminated, and wonder why it doesn't work. That's like spraying cologne over gasoline. You've changed the smell. The chelated compounds underneath are still there, still broadcasting. The system Earl uses is simple. But sequence matters. Step 1. Identify where the contamination comes from. Gas pump handles are the single biggest source. Nickel and chromium transfer from the pump housing directly to your palm every single time you fill up. Sunscreen is next. Most commercial sunscreens use chelated UV filters specifically engineered to bond to skin, which means they bond to everything you touch afterward. On fishing days, skip sunscreen on your hands entirely, or switch to a zinc-free formula. Wear a glove to the pump. Sounds like overkill until you see the catch numbers shift. Step 2 is the purge. Bank mud, the dark, fine clay from the same water you're fishing, contains clay minerals that physically bind to and strip chelated compounds from skin surface. It's not about smell. It's the clay acting as a chemical sponge. You rub it in, rinse in the same water, and your hands are reset to a neutral baseline that matches the local environment exactly. Zero cost. Step 3 is maintaining that baseline through the trip. Water temperature changes everything here. Above 72 degrees, chelated compounds diffuse through water roughly 3 times faster than in cold water. On a July morning at Lake Okeechobee, or anywhere along the Mississippi Delta, you need to re-neutralize every 45 minutes or so. That specific temperature window and the clay compositions that work best in different water types, fresh, brackish, tidal, that's in the guide with more detail, because it varies enough by region that a single answer would steer you wrong. Step 4 is your hardware. Nickel-plated hooks leach chelated ions into fresh water approximately 40 times faster than bare carbon steel. Chrome swivels are even worse. Tournament anglers on Pickwick Lake and Clear Lake spend thousands on rods and reels, then clip on a 0.08 chrome swivel that's been scaring fish since the moment it hit the water. Switch to raw brass, bare carbon steel, or uncoated copper for your terminal tackle. On heavily pressured water, that change alone shifts the odds. One more fine adjustment. Old braided line accumulates chelated deposits over a full season, especially if stored near a gas can or engine oil. The line itself starts running a chemical warning on every cast. Respool at the start of each season. Wet your new line in the fishing water before your first session. Now, if this works so well and costs close to nothing, Why is nobody at the tackle counter telling you this? That's exactly where the story gets uncomfortable. There's an $800 million a year industry built around the problem Earl solved with a handful of mud. Scent elimination sprays, attractant formulas, pro-grade fish call systems, apps that map scent drift based on wind direction and current. Entire product lines designed to address a problem they never fully explain, because explaining it clearly would show you how simple the real answer is. The companies behind those $29.99 bottles know about chelation. They know clay strips chelated metal compounds, and that the lake water itself is the closest thing to a perfect neutralizing agent you'll ever find. But clay doesn't have a profit margin. Bank mud doesn't get shelf space at Bass Pro Shops or Cabela's. It doesn't run a TV spot during the fishing shows, so instead they sell you a product that masks symptoms, then they update the formula every season, then they roll out the pro version for a subscription. The knowledge that actually works. The same chemistry behind why old Cajun guides on the bayous of Louisiana told their sons to always wet their hands in the water before touching bait. Never got a patent because it couldn't be put in a bottle and sold at retail markup. A gas pump handle, sunscreen, a chrome swivel. 3 things that are costing you fish on every single trip. Nobody at the counter will tell you that, because none of those things are what they're selling. But now you know what's actually happening. Earl's still fishing Lake Fork. Still in that 14-foot aluminum boat. Still reaches into that small container of bank mud before he picks up his first rod. Last spring I watched him put 9 bass in the boat before the nearest tournament angler had his second. The guy in the fancy rig hollered across the water asking what bait he was using. Earl held up a plain carbon steel hook. The guy shook his head and went back to scrolling his fish finder. That gap between knowing what a product does and understanding why it works is the whole story. Click now. Secure your access to high-level fishing and let these strategies start transforming your next trips out on the water. The link is in the first pinned comment. When you come back from the water having applied what you learned, come back here and comment, "Caught more." That's your commitment to your own growth as a fisherman. And it might be exactly the step that separates the stories you hear from the stories you're going to start telling. 90% of fishermen are broadcasting a chemical warning on every single cast and have no idea. You now know what it's called, where it comes from, and how to stop it with something that costs nothing. The old guides on the Sabine, the bayous, the Chesapeake, they didn't have fancy labs. They just paid attention to the right things. Hit subscribe and turn on the bell. This is the kind of knowledge that doesn't come in a box.